Hello and welcome to your weekly podcast from Freestyle Media in partnership with the Magic 5, where you can get 15% off a pair of their custom fit goggles by using the link in the description to this episode. And do also check out Oxalt Strength and Conditioning. That is Nathan Oxford, the strength and conditioning coach who's been working with swimmers up and down the country, getting great results for them, both in and out of the pool. So you can check his work out at www.oxalt.com. Okay then, so this week I'm joined by three guests. I've got Kath Tunnicliffe, James Barwick, and it's a debut for Eleanor Grimes. So thanks for joining us, Eleanor. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. And look, thanks all for joining. It's going to be an interesting conversation today because we're going to talk about technology and the role that it plays or the role that it can play for our swimming, both in terms of training and racing. So we've got people on this podcast who are very pro technology, but we also do have perhaps one or two that are anti-technology, but I'll let you guys, the listeners, decide for yourselves who you think that is. What I want to kind of do is work through the conversation, beginning with just where we're all at with technology, whether we use it or not, and if so, like what do we use? So I'm going to come to you first, Eleanor, as it is your debut today. I want you to very simply just list off tell us if you use any technology in your training and your racing, and then what technology specifically you use. But we'll go on later to talk about the benefits that you think that those things bring.
Okay, so I'm in general a massive tech fan. I live and die by various watches. I have this, which is the Apple. I also have a Garmin as well. And of course, if it's not on Strava, does it really exist? So in reality, I definitely do at least try and record my training, and I do use platforms to try and monitor my training, and they're the main kind of areas that I use at the moment.
Brilliant. So quick question then. The technology that you use, is this all... Well, I mean, it sounds like it's all just personal for you. Do the club that you swim for, DX, or Derby XL, so do they use anything across the board for everybody?
No, not at this moment in time. The only kind of platform we have is the Team Unify, which I'm sure is great for the younger kids, but for most of us in the Master Squad, we're just like, oh, it takes money off us. Thank you. That's about as far as and much use as we get out of it. And WhatsApp. We all love WhatsApp, right? We all love the WhatsApp chat.
Yeah. I think that's. I think probably every club has a WhatsApp, and probably Black Countries and Potteries Masters have a WhatsApp group too, Kath, just to keep you all in the loop. Yeah. So I'll come on to you. What technology do you use, if any at all?
Okay. Well, I've got my heart rate monitor set up. So that's a Polar Watch, a H10 strap, and the Polar B tab. I guess the tunes I play in my ear are tech, are they? Is that tech? Yeah, I'm having a nod. So yeah, I haven't been playing them so much recently because I find it very tight having the earpieces in with my cap over the top, and I have to have my cap now because of my hair colouring. Otherwise, the dye floats around in the chlorinated pool. So obviously, I've got to wear a hat now. So yeah, tunes playing through, very nice indeed. Apart from that, let me just think. I mean, yes, the club have got the WhatsApp going, and we've set up some great banking apps, so that works really well for all the money that's got to come in and out. It doesn't sound like Eleanor's set up, but people are paying for cats and membership and everything else ever so easily. I mean, that's really a dream. I don't think I can think of anything else at this moment, Joe.
No, that's a good comprehensive list, though, for sure. James, tell us about all the tech that you use.
I think given the ladies have introduced themselves as the tech wizards, I am I'm not anti-tech, but I'm the minimal tech. I have a pace clock at the end of the pool that I can see, and I've got my mind. That's again, I'll caveat this. I'm not anti-tech. I am not. You shouldn't use it. You should use it. Everyone to themselves. Me personally, I just think all I need is the clock to see what time I'm swimming, and the rest is in my mind. I mean, obviously, yes, WhatsApp groups and the like, but in terms of actual training tech, clock. That's it for me.
Yeah. So interesting question then, James. Have you ever tried tech? Have you ever worn a watch before? Have you ever tried anything and taken your opinion and thought, I don't like this, or have you just always thought, not for me?
As I've tried watches, it just never felt right. And as an age group swimmer, we had some heart rate monitors that we could just dab on and do the work with. But as part of my degree, I worked out that I can actually self-take my heart rate and be pretty much as accurate as the heart rate monitors, so less faffing around. So I have tried it, just wasn't for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I'm in the same boat as you. So I own a Garmin watch, but I haven't wore it now for about 18 months at all. It just lives in my drawer. And I remember getting that for I think I got it for my birthday in like the lockdown year maybe, and I bought it with the intention of wearing it for training, just specific. And I was like adamant I was not just going to wear it all day. Like a lot of people just kind of live with them on, don't they? And I thought I'm just going to have this for training, and I stuck to that. But I actually found I got to a point where I was like, I'm getting too obsessed with the data, and it was a bit of an addictive thing. And then I just thought I need to put the watch away now because it's starting to affect how I feel about my training now. Like if I don't quite hit the right amount of meters or the speed or whatever, and I just thought actually this is getting too silly for me. So for me, I think I'm probably like you. I'm not anti-tech, but I just personally I think I'm better without it.
Very very similar to you. And James Smith, the online PT that you've probably seen across social media, he did a review of the wearable recovery watch, and I remember watching that. He said, yeah, it was great. He was telling me I'd slept well, I'd done this, I'd done that, but it doesn't tell you how you feel. You can, if you get too wrapped up in the data. My watch has said I shouldn't go training today. I mean, I'm a parent, I work, everything. I've been to the gym early in the morning, having had 4 hours sleep, and still done personal best. If I was wearing that watch, the watch would say don't go. So it's that balance. You like you say, you can get too involved in the tech and it takes over. Sometimes you just got to go with how you feel, or still train, but just modify it while you're there.
Completely agree. So let's go back around the houses then. So Eleanor, you've obviously talked about the tech that you do use. You've got your watches on, all that kind of stuff. So can you tell us what kind of value you think that actually brings? So just describe basically how you use it, both literally in the moment while you're training, and then sort of outside of training when you're reviewing your sessions.
Actually, this is where I end up being the person who's got splinters in the bum because I will sit on the fence till the cows come home. So I wear a watch. I got into the habit of doing it during lockdown because, like everyone else, I picked up running, and that's what you do when you run: is you buy a smartwatch. I also do an awful lot of open water swimming, so I'm going to shout out Val Thorpe there, who is my terrible bad habit. It got me into that one. And it's very difficult when you're open water to be able to monitor how long you've swum for, how far you've swum. So I do a lot of my training at a lake called Spring Lakes, and I know roughly the distance around the lake. But sometimes you end up having to kind of cut sections off, usually because there's a vicious swan about to fly at you, and you don't go there. But also, I think it was a classic one where I swam Lake Bala a couple of years ago, and it's an L-shaped course, and I somehow still swam it wrong. Don't quite know how I got that wrong, but I did, because I worked out I probably swam about 5k instead of the 4.5 distance, which would explain why my time was terrible. So when I'm swimming, it's very difficult to look at a watch unless you're in a pool and you can look at the end. Open water swimming, you can't really look at it as you're going because it's just keep going. Yeah. And that's probably the area that the data I get from the watch is of most value to me. When I get in a pool, I'll admit I'm blessed. I've got an incredible coach in Jamie Brown, who you interviewed a few weeks ago. And nothing, and I mean nothing, is going to be him standing at the side of the pool with a stopwatch yelling at me. In which case, why look at my watch? Because what he is saying is to the 10th of a second, and he's bang on right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a bit of a 50-50.
Yeah. But would you still monitor or track your sessions in the pool with Derby XL?
I do, but when I get home, the data's terrible.
Okay.
So it could be my watch, it could be the way that my wrist is. So my heart rate is incredibly inaccurate on it, which I'm guessing is why, Kath, you use a heart rate monitor. And it records all of my kind of laps 25 meters short. So if instead of recording a 400, it records a 375 and then a 25, which would be my rest period, which just completely ruins my metrics. So I may as well not bother. I do technically still put it on Strava, but all I do there is I put it on there for a kind of training load kind of value. So I can just see how much training I am doing. Am I building up too quickly? Do I need to take some rest periods? That's the only reason that I would really record it.
Yeah, interesting. Kath, obviously you train alone, so I can imagine. I mean, first things first. The tunes that you've got on in your ear. That must be nice if you are kind of on your own. But I would imagine tech probably plays a greater part in your training just to help you along.
Yeah. Do you know what? Coming on this podcast has made me realise that I was actually into heart rate monitoring, but heart rate monitoring to me is fitness, and I was into fitness before I was returned to master swimming. Now I'm talking about a 25-year career in master swimming, so for me to say this is really formative in developing to where I've got to now, it's massive, I think. I recently, well, I'm only thinking about this podcast made me realise that. I was originally a PE teacher and doing quite a bit of like in the era where you do aerobics classes and stuff like that. And I was really, really, really interested in fitness. And then there's a guy called Kenneth Cooper who came across from the States with his wife Mildred, and they got this, like, it's all about developing your cardiovascular system, and here's all the ways you can do it. And really, it came down to swimming, running, cycling, the repetitious kind of activity rather than the stop-start stuff, and just a matter of how long you did it and the intensity. And we all know about this now, but this is back in the 80s, guys, so I don't suppose the rest of the audience were actually born then. So no, this is where my this is where well, it is back in the 80s, and that's where I formed this kind of attachment, and it is an attachment. And then I was cycling. I did some really long cycle rides, and I was interested in heart rate monitoring at that stage. But it was not dictating life to me. It was I think it was the beginning of my journey, because I do think when I look back, it is one massive journey. And I've read loads of stuff about cardiovascular training, about heart rate zones, etc. And really, from wearing a simple strap, which it was at first, and a watch, and just monitoring as I was going along, I've now gone to what I think is a very accurate piece of kit in the H10. And I'm not trying to sell it. I have no shares in this company, but the guy who trains me in the gym swears by them, and it's a strap, and it's much more accurate, and it's gone up against a lot of testing. But I have a watch still. So
can I just ask about the strap? How comfortable do you find that? Because I'm assuming it's a chest strap, right?
Yeah.
So do you find that rubs with, like, your costume or anything else?
Never. And honestly, I genuinely can say that I don't think there was any time in my 25 years for anything other than the odd session I haven't been wearing a strap around my. And it's just it's my body, and I think there's a relationship between me and a heart rate monitor, which is not overpowering. It definitely isn't. I'm not beholden. I will always be in control of it. If I don't feel like it, I don't feel like it. And but it's taught me so much. And that's what I want to impress. And I think it's this connection, because I have worked out in my own head and my own way of going about this sport that this is my machine. This is the main boiler room, if you want, my heart and my lungs, and I really truly believe it is. Now, I know there's all sorts of technical stuff and that. And honestly, because I train on my own and I get like very, very little capacity to do a great deal technically, I have to absorb what I can, but realise that I'm never going to have the benefit that you guys have got with these brilliant coaches you've got. There just isn't one that exists in my world, you know, and I've probably gone way past the time when I'm going to be conditioned enough to actually absorb into a group and a coach. And I realise that I've become far too independent minded now. But I accept all that because it's who I am and it's how I've got to where I've got to. You know, but this is my body, this ability to be able to, if you like, almost see inside the body as well as kind of being there in the pool. And yes, I'm always trying to do things that are to do with technique, always trying to consider that one and combine that. But no, the heart and lung capacity issue is, I think, incredibly important in all this. And being able to monitor heart rate is, I think, a key to fitness. I absolutely think it's a key to fitness.
Yeah.
I was going to say the irony is I'm exact same school of thought as Kath, but I do it without technology because obviously any piece of technology is only ever going to take that small snapshot at that particular time you're looking at it, you know, to get an average heart rate, etc., etc. But it's always that snapshot. But obviously, as I've learned, you can literally look up at a clock, take your heart rate for 6 seconds, put a 0 on the end of it. You've got a pretty good indication of where you are. So heart rate zones, training, exactly as Kath said. I just do it manually.
But I want to come back to James on that because particularly now I've got the Polar Beat app I added to my knowledge, and I do think it's the expansion of my knowledge. I added that about 4 years ago. Now, you know, I've become the queen of returning to swimming and returning to fitness, and this comes through lockdown. It becomes through illness. It becomes through having a couple of operations last year, and I've become very good at coming back. Now, I kind of get exactly. I hope I do anyway. Hope it's not too expressing more than I actually do have a capacity for, but I get how to build my fitness back up again, you know, and do it. But I know it isn't just a snapshot. I know what I'm going to have to do, how I'm going to start off. And then when I do feel I'm getting my fitness back and I'm wanting to get race fit, I know what I've got to do then. Yeah. And the pattern of what's going to happen with that heart rate and how it's going to very much differ. So it's a whole pattern. And the Polar Beat app will give me those patterns. Now, I'm fairly experienced now, but I design my programs to give me that result. Yeah. So I know I want to do this with my heart. I will do this as my program, and that's the order it comes in. That makes sense to you, doesn't it, James? But that controlling situation. So I'm kind of disagreeing with you, James, about this. You know, take it here. Take it 10 minutes later, you know, get a snapshot because I've got it on my wrist. So every time I finish the swim, I don't need it a lot. I know pretty much where I am. I'm very comfortable, and I know what I should be getting on the graph when I see the graph afterwards. But I also know before I go in what I want to get as well, and that's why I've devised the program to do in the pool to get me that result with my heart rate monitor.
Kath.
And it's a full circle, isn't it, when you think of it?
Yeah.
Question.
Like I said,
Sorry. Just kind of by the sound of what you're saying, Kath, the reason the heart rate monitor works for you is because you really understand, because you've used it very extensively, exactly what you need to do from the readings that you get from it. As someone who's kind of come into it, I'd say relatively recently, probably around 2020, when I first started tracking, mostly running, to be honest, and that's the kind of view I'm coming from. It's really great when they're sitting there going, you need to do this in heart rate zone 2 and this in heart rate zone 4 so that you can build up blah blah blah. But I don't even know what my heart rate zones are. I don't know how to calculate them. I'm looking at my numbers, and even now I'm sitting there going, some of these don't quite work with what is the standard as per what my watch would say it was. So whilst I think for you, obviously it works incredibly well, but how much prior knowledge do you need for it to be that beneficial to you?
Massive. Honestly, Eleanor, you need massive. I mean, I started off by saying I've done this in excess of 25 years, and I mean, it isn't going to be something you can pop into the pool with. 3 years. You say you've been doing this business. Well, it's just a different. It's not possible for you to take a lot from what I'm saying, and you're not. And fortunately, you're in a club situation. You've got a coach. I mean, I'm having to, I'm having to replace what I haven't got, and I'm explaining how I'm replacing. I am my own coach, and I am my own. I think I'm my own, if you like, fitness scientist as far as when I'm in the pool. And so it's the replacement of things that you've actually got in very well educated. I mean, you're in flipping Derby Excel. How much better do you want to be? I take my hand off, I think, to have had the opportunity for something like that. So no, I'm not trying to say for 1 minute. I mean, you can get in there and you can concentrate on getting up and down the pool and doing, the program as well as you can. Whereas I'm in a 100% different position. But I guess that's why Joe asked me to come on, because he realised from my answer, and he knows me well enough already, that I'm going to come up with a different agenda for you guys. So,
yeah, well, obviously, like you say, knowing how to apply the technology, if you use it, obviously, Kath's got the experience. I've done degrees in it, so like I have that understanding. Should I choose to use it?
Yeah.
But any of the best technology is only based on the general population data that they've put into it. Obviously, that's where you have to learn yourself to be able to know, like Kath's done that, with experience, where I've done through the science side of it. And I mean, you will get to know, and obviously you can ask your coaches, you can do the research yourself, but that's the best technology is not specific to you unless you can literally tune it to yourself. It's always based on a general population data that's fed into the algorithm, which is what spits out at the end. So yeah, you'll see it on the treadmills in the gym. You need to be in this heart rate zone, etc., etc. That is based on the general public. It's not specific to a swimmer. It might be
100%. Absolutely 100%. Now I'll give you something hopefully that you'll smile about. In order for me to get the technology that I've got to work for me, I have to say I'm a 46-year-old woman. I'm a 71-year-old woman, but I can't possibly get anything that will give me anything, and I never have a birthday either. All right, so I continue to be a 46-year-old woman, and so all my zones are based on that. All right, so no, it doesn't matter what you, and this is the same with just about every bit of kit, isn't it? It's not gonna. You can't follow it and expect it to work for you personally. Not without adaptation and the capacity to see in the way you were describing, James, doesn't do a good enough job.
So I think what's really interesting there, the way that you've described all of that, Kath, is that you've got all this technology, you've learnt about it in terms of how to actually apply it to you personally, but also you've set your training up so that you're getting the best out of the technology. And I think that to me is really interesting, because again, this idea of just chucking a watch on and thinking, I'm gonna hit start at the start of my session and stop at the end of it, and then think that it's going to really give you some value. I think that's probably where I'm coming from with this. And James, that's why I wonder, with you being somebody who likes to strip right back from technology and just do the basics of yesteryear, as it were. Is that because you maybe had that experience yourself? You chucked a watch on and then you thought, actually, what's this really given me?
Yeah. It didn't, for me, technology didn't add enough value to invest further in it. There was nothing that I could get from a watch or paying £100 for a heart rate monitor that I couldn't monitor myself anyway. Yeah. Obviously, yes, people love to put it on Strava, have the graphs, base their training around it. My training's based around, focusing on what I need to focus on, which is the swimming side of it, the skills, the actual. And I will modify based on heart rate, how I'm feeling, etc., but I don't rely on a graph to tell me, oh, you should back off a bit. That's where, it could work for some people. Again, as we said, it's different for everyone. For me, I prefer to go on how I'm feeling. And, yes, if my heart rate is at 200 when I'm supposed to be doing something aerobic, clearly there's something wrong, back off. But, yeah, technology, the available technology to me never added enough value to invest further in it.
Yeah.
So that's why, it's again, I'm not anti-tech. If there was a heart rate monitor that I could stick on myself that I knew wasn't going to move, fly off, because I can't wear a strap, it would just fall off, it would get in the way all the time. If there was literally something I could stick on and it would stay on for the course of the session without impeding me, yeah, I'd probably have it, but it doesn't exist that I know of. So I just rely on good old-fashioned self-taking heart rate and a pen and paper to write a few notes down afterwards to remember for the next session.
Yeah. Just before we move on to the next part of this conversation, I just want to come back to you, James, on the idea of there being a placebo effect with technology. So again, if you're using technology, and as both Eleanor and Kath have said, they get the data, they can monitor it, they know that they're training correctly or incorrectly, etc. Is it, again, how much do you value the idea that actually it can just help you along in terms of making you feel good about what you're doing, and even just simple things like it's on Strava at the end of the week and you go, God, look at all the meters I've swum this week. You can see it and it makes you feel good.
Absolutely. I mean, it sort of comes back to discussions you've had on the podcast before, what helps you training, what's the right training for you. I mean, some people might get a psychological boost by saying, oh, I've done 20,000 meters this week and seeing it on Strava, and that gives them a boost for the next week to do a little bit more. That helps increase their fitness. As Kath said, she can base her training around her heart rate development. So there are positives there. Whereas on the flip side, you can look at it as, look, my resting heart rate has decreased, therefore I must be getting fitter, but that's, general cardiovascular fitness. But if you're a sprinter, that doesn't have that much impact on it. So, you might be thinking, I'm going to get faster before you go to a competition, and maybe not concentrate on the areas that you need to, because you're looking at or focusing on one specific data point, and that's not necessarily a placebo, but maybe taking away from where you should be targeting. So, again, two ends of the spectrum. It works for people, it doesn't work for others.
Yeah, it's worth saying at this point, actually, that, James, that again, you love to go on feel with your training, and when you get to the point where you are hugging a bin, ready to be sick, that's when you know you've worked hard.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times leading up to nationals. I mean, not intentionally, but you've emptied the tank quite literally, and it's not all right. It's not a great feeling as you're doing it, but afterwards, you know the value of I've really put everything in.
I've got a question, Joe, and people are going to laugh on the end of this. I know that, but somebody explain Strava to me. And I'm only thinking we'll have listeners who are thinking the same thing, and I don't actually know what it is. So
no, not a problem. It's essentially like a social media, but for tracking your fitness activity.
This is where you put up how far you've done. I've seen people do that.
Yeah,
gosh, I mean, what a thing to do.
Yeah, so it's either, I mean, most people would use it in the sense if you have like a Garmin watch or an Apple Watch or something, and you track an activity, whether that's a swim, a run, even a walk, a cycle, whatever it may be.
Okay.
When it links up to your phone, and then so when you stop the activity, that will automatically upload to Strava, and you get all your data there. The best one I ever did, I used to wear it when I played five-a-side. So you just see this like tiny little like kind of rectangle, and me just tons of squiggles of everywhere I've ran, which was quite funny. But some people do manually add, so they know that if they've not worn a watch. But it's a way that if you want to track your meet without doing pen on paper, if you wanted to have it.
So unless I've got this wrong, and I will throw this back, Strava's got absolutely nothing to do with technology actually assisting you in your training as such. It's about
would
saves
argue
the
it is.
world. Sorry?
Yes. So it does add to your training because it's basically like a diary almost. So it's a way of
Okay.
looking back and again data you can see your split. So if you've got like a
Okay.
Garmin watch, then every time
So,
you hit.
so it's not necessarily about sharing on social media.
No,
No, you can.
when I, yeah, I
Yes.
called it social media because you can
Okay.
follow other athletes and they can follow you. So if
Okay.
I go on my Strava, I've got like my cousins are all runners. So and you see that they've gone for a run yesterday and they did 12K and whatever time.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
that type of sharing.
I think
Generationally, this is another
I
world.
think yeah, I
That's
think it started off as a digital logbook, so to speak.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
then it turned into friendly competition, which became not so friendly competition
Okay.
and years.
I'm really glad I asked that question.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, my brother-in-law is a brilliant runner, and we're from a small town called Belper. Eleanor will know it, and he's you could Strava now has this thing where because it obviously uses GPS whenever you do anything. So obviously running, for example, it tracks where you've run, and so it knows of all the people that have tracked a run in that particular place, you can become like the king or the queen of that particular run. So
Yeah.
my brother-in-law is like king of a particular run in Belper, and then one of his friends will go and beat it. So next time Harry comes back to Belper for a weekend, he's intent on going out and trying to beat, and it just becomes just a funny competition.
Okay.
But we all just sit there laughing at him, really.
Yeah.
But
No.
moving the conversation along, what I want to talk about now is both in terms of personal use. So we've all talked about our personal technology, but also I'm thinking about technology that, and again, I know this might not apply for you, Kath, but just think about it from your point of view in terms of how you train. As a club, how can we use technology? And what I'm referring to here is more you'll see the pros, for example, they've got cameras, for example, in the water, so they can see, and obviously everything they do gets recorded. So they'll dive in, and then they can jump out, look at the monitor, and actually watch their entry and how streamlined they were, etc., etc. So what I kind of want to do now is go round the houses again, and Ellen, I'll start with you. What technology would you love to have? And let's just say it's a world with no limits now. So you're at Derby Excel. Jamie comes in and goes, guys, I've got this great new kit. What kit would you love for him to say?
To be honest, firstly, if Jamie sees a new piece of kit that he decides that he wants, he puts up a crowdfunding page.
Nice.
So at the moment, we're currently crowdfunding. You know, the dry land. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but these are Gen Z or something where you kind of lie in a block and it should help work the same muscles as swimming.
Yeah, using cords.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, we've got that. He wanted a bungee, so we've got bungees.
Nice.
To be honest, he uses video footage a lot. It must, for me, it's the most boring because I do middle to long distance swimming. So that means you're stood there with a camera for up to 20 odd minutes, just filming my 1500. And it's like, nothing changes after the first 100, I'll tell you that much. It's just constant. But actually, that is one thing that Jamie uses quite a lot in training. And in the run up to nationals, there was a session where I think there was 4 of us in the session who were all targeting nationals. So he got us all into a separate lane. He asked us to essentially, from the blocks, do a set distance at race pace. And he filmed it, and then he stood to the side whilst everyone else was doing cool down, and he went through it and analysed it with you and what you needed. And that one session made such a difference to what my headspace was at by the time I got into nationals. So I'll admit that's great. I mean, in an ideal world, it would be great to have the Adam PT pools, never-ending pools in my back garden, but it ain't that big and it's on a hill, so that's not going to happen. But it's one of those things where I just don't know how much technology can ever really replace the knowledge and experience of a good coach. For me, I would pay so much more to make sure Jamie stays with our squad, which, to be fair, I think he really enjoys us, so that's working well for us. But having that access is so much more better value for money than any watch and any tech I could buy.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because there will be clubs up and down the country and in every country in the world where they have a coach who probably doesn't really add a lot of value. They probably just stand there and tell everybody what to do and then never really give feedback. So I
Yeah, we've been
completely
there.
agree with you, Ellen. I think, yeah, I completely agree with you. Having an
Mm,
engaged coach
mm,
that is willing to give feedback
mm,
is priceless. But actually, you can also have coaches that, frankly, they may as well just text you the set rather than
mm.
wasting the
Yeah,
time turning up.
I'm going to say in
But
the past we've literally had people who've come up and gone, "What set would you like me to put up on the board?"
Mm.
Well, I may
brilliant.
as well do this myself.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, that being said, then, Kath,
Yeah.
that's a nice segue, really. But back to you again, because
Okay.
yeah, because
I mean, one of the things I will say to Eleanor, and I've said this to a lot of people I know, and I've seen this time and time again, is, you know what, if you're going to survive this sport, you have to have resilience. You have to be able to make it up as you go along. So having a great coach, love it, love it, love it. And I'm so pleased for you, and I hope it happens for a long time. But adaptation, change, getting on with all sorts. I mean, I could speak forever on this subject about adaptation, forever, I promise you. Because I think that whilst I would love to be in your situation, and I would certainly 20 years ago have loved to be in your situation, it was just never going to happen. And even if it did, I know plenty of people it didn't happen for that long, and then it's what next? And they are often people who fall off the planet. Now, I have a lifetime commitment to this sport, and you know, because it gives me what I want, which I started off by saying, it gives me the fitness I want, and I'm not sure how I'm going to get that in any other way. And I happen to love water, so it seems to be a perfect combination to me. But you know, you do have to have this ability to make it up as you go along, probably as well, if you're going to go on and on and on. But I will wish you well, Eleanor. I'm not wishing you and you're in a fabulous position, and I'm really pleased for you.
Yeah,
I've
we
made,
are
I've
very, very aware of how lucky we are.
good,
It's
good,
worth noting, I think back in 2019, our squad had 3 swimmers, and it's only
wow,
since Jamie's come back, we're now at about
yeah,
40. So
yeah,
we have
that's
brilliant.
had
brilliant
the
for you.
lean times as well as the, and we trust me, we are just sitting there going, please stay with us.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah, we
yeah,
are appreciative. Anyway, sorry.
yeah. I've designed a smart pool. We have smart motorways. I've designed a smart pool. So
Nice, I like
yeah,
it.
right, you like it. So I've got on my fingers. I've got a hand control, which is like just one side of one finger, and it allows me to press buttons, and it attack. It's completely fictitious, by the
Yeah,
way.
I love it. No,
So, all right, you got it. So it's like a rubberized thing, and it's got these little things that I can press. So I can do that with my thumb onto my finger, and it works really, really well with the pool. So the pool is the technology. The pool. That's an amazing thought, isn't it? So what I can do is I can turn a film on, cameras on. So I can turn the cameras on, and they'll. I've got a feeling they're going to just come below the right lane ropes, because it doesn't matter which lane I'm in, it'll still film me, or either from the side or from front end or back end. It's absolutely superb, and it just depends which of these hand controls that I use. Now, what I can also do, which I think is a part of my imagination, is I can get feedback on small sections of like a swim. So maybe I'll do a 400 meters, and maybe I want to know what actual speed I was going, you know, for the first length, or for the first maybe half a length, 10 meters, and when different times in the in a section of a swim. So I'd like to know, to get that feedback. It'll go straight onto my phone, obviously, and I'll be able to look back at the information afterwards, as well as look at the filming. It'll do all the regular stuff. I shall get a record of my reps and times. I shall get a record of the total distance I've done, and um, but I also wonder whether this very smart pool, which it obviously is, can do some digitalisation to show where my hand position is, where my arm position is, and perhaps superimpose with some kind of improvement idea of a slight variation in the angle. That might actually be on the whole of my core, you know, so I'm showing that I'm tilting a bit on my freestyle or my backstroke, and so it's there's a kind of virtual coach element in this smart pool, and I'm just wondering why not.
Quick question. Your virtual smart pool, which sounds amazing, by the way, if you'd
It does
like
sound
to
brilliant. Yeah.
get it crowdfunded and put in at Derby, we'd love you.
Okay.
Would it also have some form of AI so that it could adapt to the different swimmers? So, for example, Val Thorpe, who's a mutual friend of ours, she unfortunately had breast cancer a few years ago, which I'm hoping she won't mind me saying. She's pretty open about it. But I know one of the first things that our coach at the time did when she got back into the pool was getting her to do mobility exercises on land so that she could work out what she could do. So that she then modified her catch and her stroke based on what ability she physically had, rather than just basing it off because like we've mentioned already, so much tech is on the average human being, and actually that's not always beneficial. So we add that into your perfect pool.
There's a lot of controversy about AI, isn't there? About the fact that they've standardised so much about human beings and that they don't see the diversity. So couldn't agree with you more. And of course, this tech is absolutely brilliantly attuned to diversity and differences, as you would expect. Based on what I've come up with, do bear in mind that I don't have a start block, I don't have backstroke flags, and I've just got an ordinary clock on the wall on one end. So I am coming from a fairly dismal starting point.
I love it. I really want to go in your smart pool. That just sounds absolutely fantastic. James, I'm going to come to you, and again, I know technology is something that you don't use, but just imagine in a world of smart pools. Imagine your own smart pool next to Kath's, and you can have whatever you want.
Absolutely. This is probably the one bit where I break from not wanting technology. A flume tank, or like you said, the PT never-ending pool. That with a bank of cameras to be able to do really in-depth stroke analysis, head on, over the top, side on, underneath, to break down the bits that you can't see, your coach can't see. Ideal world, I'd have one of them in the back garden. I'd be more than happy with that. Again, yes, there is always value that can be added from technology, and that's where I would see value to myself. And if I won the lottery, there would be one of them in the garden as soon as possible.
Yeah, brilliant. I think for me, it kind of takes a little bit of what everybody has said. I'd almost take a bit of everything there, and what I would love to have is something in my ear, a headphone almost in my ear, where the coach could talk to me while I was swimming. So almost a walkie-talkie system. So you can't hear everything he's saying while he's whistling around the pool, but he can push a little button if he wants to talk to me, or he or she wants to talk, and they can say, "Joe, just think about your hand position," or "Could you give me a little bit more, please?" To have a coach in my ear, literally as I'm swimming. I think that's the one technology I think I would love to have. As much as I'd love to have cameras and everything else, if I had to choose one thing, I'd have a coach in my ear whilst I was swimming.
Can I point out, I did a 1,500 metres earlier this year, and about halfway through it, my coach started dancing on poolside, which was basically his cue that my pace was dropping, so I had to pick it back up again.
Nice.
Kind of basically the same thing, but the low-tech level.
A good little cue. I like it. So the final question then, I was going to ask quite a generic question of, so do we think that tech is actually any good or not? But I think we've all kind of answered that already. So what I'm going to do is slightly reverse it and say, Eleanor, if you took all the technology away that you currently use, how much do you think that would affect your training? Do you think you'd still be all right? Or do you really feel like you'd miss out on something? Or do you think you could adapt?
I'd adapt to a large degree of it, because quite frankly, my watch for swim training is completely I can give or take it. I would really miss it running, because in that instance, I use it a lot more because that's where I am uncoached. Yeah. And it can just give you those slight prompts. And one area we haven't really talked about is the fact that often with running, what I get is pre-programmed sets kind of sent to my watch. And okay, I know you've always got the old-fashioned board, and that's always a option, but it is sometimes just quite nice to not have to worry about it, or not have to sit there and squint at the clock, because unfortunately at Derby the pace clock doesn't work, and the only clock that does is the big one right at the far end, and you have to squint it a bit because sometimes it will change and it'll be in red with white writing on it, so you can't read it. So so to a degree, I probably wouldn't miss it as much as any in terms of my performance, but I probably miss it as a comfort blanket and like a little mental crutch, if that kind of makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense, and I would imagine if we had 100 people on this podcast, 95 would probably give a similar answer there. That really they think they could live without it, but actually they just think they'd miss that. As that comfort, again, we talked about placebo earlier, James. It's almost that kind of thing that it's just helping you along a little bit. So, Kath, I've got a feeling you're going to give quite a different answer again because of everything that you've said. If you took it all away, including the heart monitors and everything, how do you think you'd get on?
Lost. I'd be really lost, and I really do concur with Eleanor. I mean, I think, even just the clock on the wall, I'd be lost without that. I'd be lost without my heart rate monitor, and like everything else, I think I'd just have to find a way. But I'd be totally lost, and I do have a very good knowledge about what my heart's doing now, and I use it actually when I do all my swims beyond 50 metre. Beyond 100 metres, I use the knowledge I've got about what my heart's doing. In fact, it's really funny. No, I won't go on to that because you've asked me a different question. So yeah, I can't really go beyond that, Joe, and it's quite remarkable for me to have so little to say. So.
Well, I've got a question for you though, because you've talked about your headphones before and the music that you listen to, and
Okay.
I've never asked you what's your playlist. What kind of genre? Have
Okay, that's really interesting because there's lots of stuff I like to listen to when I'm chilling, and it can be quite varied. I'm a big Pink fan, a big Miley Cyrus. Oh, I love Miley Cyrus. So stuff like that, love it. But it doesn't work so well in the pool. I tend to feel because of this, there's a lot going on, and you don't really want the music to be that kind of thing that you've got to get into that deeply. So I find I best go down something I've heard a million times, but has got a great beat. So I think it's got it's got to have a fast beat to keep you motivated, in the flow. Boom, boom, boom. It's got to be doing that to me. But it's got to be, I'm going to be going down the route. I'm a 71-year-old lady, so please excuse this, but, a bit of Cher, a bit of Tina blasting,
Brilliant.
or a few others, and they'll do the trick beautifully. But so it's familiar stuff. I like the old Phil Collins, get him on the drums and stuff like that. Let's have a bit. So it's all real. I know it inside out, the tune. I've got no problem. So it's an automatic, but it's going to zap me. It's going to do that for me.
Nice.
So does it have to be a certain beat? Sorry.
I think you're struggling if you start going too slow. I would not do that because, again, it takes the mind. It's ever so interesting because you can get this for all sorts of subject about what does music actually do to your brain. And it can change the balance of your brain. There's all sorts of science on this. So, yeah, you really do need to keep that beat going and to keep it. But everybody, I'm not assuming that people are going to go for my playlist, one in the slightest, but you've got to keep it going. I think to have that activity level and that on the ball, in there, on the edge a little bit. You've got to be a little bit on the edge, haven't you, when you're training?
You use it as a trigger.
Trigger.
Yeah. I'm imagining now your smart pool. Scrap the headphones. You've just got all this music blasting out around the smart pool. I love it.
I'm seeing video now of real. I'm in the video now. I don't know quite where that's coming into it, but
Yeah.
maybe that's. I mean, we didn't talk about you can get smart goggles, can't you? And I don't know anybody who's ever had any of those, but
I
I
saw
mean,
someone with
how
them.
you get? Sorry.
I saw someone with them the other day.
Oh,
They
right.
were a triathlete,
Okay.
surprisingly. But yeah,
Okay.
because Derby Tri
There's all
Club
sorts
were
of
in the name next
platforms
door.
for it. Yeah, I know. Maybe somebody else can talk about that, but I wonder. I have no idea what that's like.
Yeah.
I've got.
Sorry, James. Just before I come to you, we are actually going to do a part 2 of this podcast, and I've got another set of guests lined up, and I know that one of them is going to talk about those tech goggles. So that will be interesting. That will be
really interesting. Yeah.
So James, sorry, I know you've already kind of said you don't really use any tech at the moment. So to ask you, if you strip back all your tech, how would you get on? I presume you'd be all right.
I think I'll be fine. Yeah. But on the flip side, again, I do what I do because I have not found the additional value in adding more in. Sometimes you see the people, pushing off the wall, having to push, start the watches as they start. It's like that's taken away from the core of what you want to do. You want to make sure you're just pushing off. You want to be finishing properly. But instead of you got to do this, start the watch, stop the watch. I know, modern watches don't require you to start and stop, but you see people doing that. It's like, well, you're not pushing off properly. You're not finishing properly. The whole point of swimming is to swim. The technology should add value without distracting from the purpose. And, for me, I haven't found that piece that is going to make me, I've not seen a piece of equipment that I think I'm going to buy. I mean, a couple of guys at the club have got the smart goggles, and I have sort of thought about them, but again, will I then think, spending more time trying to concentrate on the readout and the goggle than just concentrating on the stroke? So, it's maybe I will in the future, maybe I won't, but we will see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I must say, actually, before we finish, the one piece of tech that I don't think I could live without is actually a tech suit. That's something I've worn now in the last couple of years when I've raced, and I really do. Well, especially when it's a fresh out the box one, I have to say, whether it's placebo or not, I really do feel a positive effect. So I'd probably finish with saying that actually. Well, I thought it was a really interesting discussion. So yeah, thank you all very much for your time. And everybody's got a slightly different view of technology, which I like. Completely understand where Kath's coming from with training alone. It would be interesting to hear others that train alone. Do you use more technology than probably most people do, or are you a basic bitch like James? It'll be interesting to see really. But all I do know is that I really want to get in Kath's smart pool and just crack on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm enjoying me.
And I want to get it black, and I want to add disco lights, and I just want it to turn into a club, quite frankly, with a bar at the side, and then I'm in. I'm all game. So
preferably in Mexico somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely, in the sunshine, in the outdoor pool. So thanks, James. Thanks, Kath, and thanks, Eleanor. That was a good discussion, and see you all soon.